Hello, everybody. This is Amber, and I'm here to record a day in the life from my homeschool life. So I'm sitting in my homeschool room at home, um, and this is where we spend most of our time, especially when I'm working one on one. But of course, in true homeschool fashion, we spread out across the house eventually. So I'll start out telling you a little bit about me for those who don't know. I have four kids. They are 10 years old in fourth grade, 8 years old in third grade, 6 years old in first grade, and I have a little 4 year old, and they are girl, girl, boy, boy. I've been homeschooling since my oldest was in kindergarten or from the beginning, depending on how you like to think of it. I was a stay at home mom before I started homeschooling, so they've pretty much always been with me. And in addition to homeschooling full time and running a support group for homeschoolers in my area, I also run a small business from home. It's cafephysique.com. And I send personal trainers, yoga instructors, and dietitians out to people's homes and businesses across the city. So I've been doing that for over 10 years. And I had that business before I met my husband, even. So I can pretty much do it in my sleep. It's mostly computer work at this point, and I work on it usually on the weekends and the evenings, and sometimes I'll check my email during a quick break at school, maybe while the kids are eating or doing something. So after that, we'll just kind of get into it. I'm answering questions based on things that people have asked me the most, that I think homeschool moms would be most interested in, or those who are thinking about homeschooling. I am not sharing all of this to say that this is the way that you should do it or that this is the right way. We're going to be recording a series of these videos. And so this is just the way I do it. So if you can take something from it, that's great. If you hear the things I talk about and you're like, that doesn't fit my personality or my children at all, that's totally fine too. There are a million different ways to skin this cat. So let's just jump in. In terms of how I structure my school year, we can talk about scheduling. I could probably do a whole video just about scheduling. Maybe I should do that because I don't have time here to go through every single aspect of it, but I'll just take you through some of the major steps I take when I'm planning out a school year. So, um, I do school year round, and we take usually the month of July off, and then we take, plenty of breaks throughout the year. So, in the beginning of the year, kind of really in the spring, around this time right now, I'm actually working on my calendar for the fall. So, this is April if you're watching the video later. And I can show you a little bit about what it looks like, how I start out. So I usually start out with something, a document that looks like this, a calendar, and I'll have in the links that I share with you where I get these are like free templates. You can print them out in all different formats, but I usually start with this format. I like this one because it has the holidays already marked and listed. And then I go through and circle or highlight other days throughout the year that I know that my family is going to take off. So it may be birthdays. I don't make the kids do school. If it's somebody's birthday, we all take the day off. Or times when I know we're going on vacation, or if I know grandma's coming in for a short visit. If we have big field trips planned already, or events or parties with our homeschool group, I'll mark all those out on my calendar as days that will be off. And then I'll kind of just pace out the rest of the time. We do school in terms. So they're 12-week terms. So I'll have term one, I'll have a start date, and I'll just label the weeks on this calendar. So here along the side, I'll put a one for week one, or really one, term one, week one, two, term one, week two. And I'll go on throughout the year, take our time off for all of our Christmas and Thanksgiving and all of that. And once I have all of that done, I do that in pencil because inevitably it changes. And I kind of use this as our guide throughout the year. I can kind of look at this and say, in a snapshot, this is how I plan to break up our schooling throughout the year. I have no problems changing it, but it's usually pretty close. At this point, I have a pretty good idea of what we'll be doing and kind of how our days will flow. So, um, In terms of that's an annual scheduling. In terms of weekly scheduling, I look at what are the subjects that I want to get done or accomplished for the year, what I want to teach each term, and I'll just divide those subjects up and into groups. So I'll have a list of subjects that I want to do every day, like math, and I'll have a list of subjects that I want to do once a week. It may be like a composer study, or we may want to do art or something like that, maybe once a week. And I'll have those in a separate list. And then I just go through the schedule and I lay in all the daily subjects. And then I just alternate days with one of the weekly subjects until we have everything down. And I can show you a picture. It might be hard to read on the screen. So don't worry, because I will attach links to that so you can see it on your own later. But this is an example of our master schedule. So you can see here that the things that are in yellow are the things that I'm doing with my oldest two kids, my third and fourth grader. And we start the day with that. I will say that I don't love starting the day there. I would like to start the day with the things that are in white, like here and here and here. Those are the things that the entire family does together. So it would be kind of, I know some bloggers or experts call it your morning basket or your circle time or things like that, where the whole family's together getting started with your school day. And I would do it that way, but my first grader sleeps in. He doesn't get up as early as his sisters, and if I try to wake him up, we all have a bad day. So I let that little child sleep, and that's why we don't start with our all together work. But I recommend it if you can work it out, if everyone's up in your house. So I start with my girls because they're up. And then when the little guy wakes up, we take a breakfast break. And then I go into my work right away with my first grader. So the blue is when he's alone with me. And I'll share with you in a minute what my older kids are doing while I'm working with him. So I like to do him kind of as soon as he wakes up so that he can do his schoolwork while he's, attentive and eager, and then he can just be done. And he has the rest of the day to play with his little brother, or do whatever he wants to do. Sometimes he comes in and still hangs out with us. So when he's done, I go on, and the pink is showing that I spend that time usually before lunch, but on Tuesdays we have piano lessons outside of the house, except during coronavirus, it's via Zoom inside the house, right? But normally that's outside of the house. And so I don't work with her until after lunch. But generally, right before lunch, I'll work with my third grader alone. And then at the end of the day, then we do our stuff all together. So I pull my first grader back in from whatever he's doing. And he's usually fine with that because he's had a big break at that point and he's eaten lunch and had plenty of time to play. And then at the end of the day, I work alone with my fourth grader. So she's done everything else she needs to do by that time on her own, and she's just waiting to do work with me. So this works pretty well for us. It has allowed me to get the chance to work with everybody together, but also, a little bit of the one room schoolhouse format where I'm working with all the kids together at some point and with just the older ones together, and they do their same lessons. And I separate it once I do a lesson or I read a book or we do something. Usually my third grader has no problem keeping up with her sister, but if there's going to be something like a written narration afterwards, or if they're going to do some other analysis or follow up to the lesson, then I just change my expectations in terms of what she's going to write or produce in comparison to her sister. So my third grader, just for context, is a very young third grader. So her birthday's in August. So let's say, if it helps if I explain it this way, if she was starting school when she started kindergarten, she would have been 4 for the first week, and then she would have turned 5 after school started, right after school started. Whereas my fourth grader is a very old fourth grader. She has a November birthday. So if she had gone to school when it was time to start kindergarten, come August or whatever, she would have been 5 for what, 9 months or something before that school year started. So even though they're only one grade apart, in a lot of ways they operate as if they're almost two, like they're 2 grades apart. So that's kind of our weekly schedule. And in terms of what the children do while I'm working with another sibling, I can show you. This will be probably the last thing I show you on my screen. But I have a daily checklist. This is just one. This is from a sample one from my oldest, my 4th grader. And so she has this on her clipboard Monday morning when she wakes up. I've put this on there sometime on Sunday or before I went to bed on Sunday. And it will show her what she needs to do each day, and most of these are things that she's doing completely by herself. So um there's not a lot of detail on some of them because I've already gone over this. We've been doing this for so long, they know. So in her Bible, it doesn't tell her a page number because she has a bookmark in there and she needs to read the next section that's marked. And it tells them, so for her it's usually Bible and personal devotion in the morning. For They can do, really, she can do it in any order. So I say in the morning, but I don't care what order they do this work in as long as it gets done. And some type of silent reading. This is for 30 minutes at least during the day. She can read longer, but she has to be at least 30 minutes. And then you can just see the rest of the work. I won't go through the whole thing, but if it's hard for you to see on the screen, again, I'll have it in the links afterwards. You can take a look. But some of those things I do work with her on. So, like, I've given her a math lesson. And so she's working on her math. This doesn't mean she does her math by herself every day, but just that she needs to make sure she finishes her math as independent work. Maybe whatever I got her started on and we didn't get a chance to completely finish together. And then I work with the kids on grammar as well. So I do deliver like a grammar lesson or I look at that with them. But then there may be follow up work or practice that they're doing on their own. And that's why it's on the independent list. Same thing with piano. I may be sitting on the piano bench with her helping, but I may not be. It depends on if she needs me or not. But that's something that she needs to make sure she gets done every day. And then chores are at the end of the day. So that's on our school list. I don't know if that's weird or not, but I consider that part of school because I need, the kids need to learn to do these things around the house. And I actually need them to do these things. I can't do it all by myself and teach and do all other things I need to do. So they all have chores that they do each day. So that's kind of what our daily schedule. That's what, I know one of the big questions people have is what are the other kids doing when you're working one on one? And so in my house, the other kids are doing those things. And if you had seen my first grader's checklist, his has a lot, relies a lot more on apps that he has on his iPad that he should be doing during that time when if he does have to wait for me to do something with a sibling. Usually though, he doesn't have to wait very much. So, in terms of my homeschooling style, I follow the principles mostly of Charlotte Mason. So, she was an British educator in the late 1800s. And there are multiple curriculum companies out there who offer up book lists and curricula based on her principles. And, several of them have found them to be really good. I personally am using the Charlotte Mason Institute's alviary curriculum for most of my subjects. I use a lot of books along with that from a website called Simply Charlotte Mason. And then I put together some of my own lessons, primarily related to Black history, African American culture, African culture, because I just haven't found something that I can follow word for word, lesson plans. So I usually end up creating those and I post them on my website, which is heritagemom.com. It's a blog, and you can find a lot of those lessons there. So I'll have all those things in the links as well. And let's see, what are some of the other questions I think you'd be interested in? How does your home atmosphere make it easier or more difficult to homeschool? So for me, I feel like one of the things that I've done, and I started early on and have continued, it's to create, there are a lot of things here for the children to do in our home, which I think that I'm very intentional about, so that when they're not doing their traditional academic or table work, you may call it, there are so many other things. Like the environment is rich for them to do other things other than just, watch TV. And, I'm no miracle worker. If I didn't have these other things, then I also would probably want them to be watching TV a lot because there's a lot of them and I can't entertain them 24/7. They have to learn to entertain themselves, but I feel like my job as the mother is to provide things that they can use to entertain themselves. So we have a craft room down in the basement. There's sewing machine in there and paint and every single craft supply you can possibly think of. Lots of things in the yard, trampolines, zip lines, hammocks, swing sets and slides and balls and skates and all of that stuff so that there are tons of things for them to do outside to entertain them. And then here within the house, just investing in um, the things that they love to do. So whether it's Legos or creative supplies, games, lots of board games and card games, and a Lego Boost, which has like they can put together this Lego thing and code it to make it move. Those are all popular things in the house. So, just making sure that they have the things they need. And also, I read a book early on. I'll try to remember to reference it in the links. And the author of this book, she's an experienced homeschool mom. Her kids are all grown now. And she talked about creating a literary household where books are, everywhere, and that there are a lot of books, and cultivating and creating a quality home library. And I took that to heart when the kids were really young. I was thankful that I read that book, and I've done that. So, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books that the kids can use. And it helps. We go to the library sometimes, but we usually don't because we have so many of the things that we need here, and there are books laying about everywhere. The kids all have bookshelves in their bedrooms, and I try to make sure they see me reading a lot, see my husband reading, and so that they can kind of identify as the Johnsons are readers. So I would say that those are some of the things that impact the environment, the home, and creating the type of homeschooling atmosphere that I want in my home. Um, so let's see. How do I select curriculum? I've changed curriculum a couple of times, and really I've liked everything that I've used. Usually when I change, it's because it's something new that came out. Like when I first started, the Charlotte Mason alviary didn't exist, and so that's why I wasn't using it then. But when I found out about it, it sounded really intriguing. There were so many aspects to it that I really liked, and I decided to stop. I was using I started with Sunlight when my kids were younger, which is also a literary based curriculum based on books, real books versus textbooks and workbooks. And then I was using Ambleside Online, which is a free Charlotte Mason curriculum online. And then when the alviary started, I moved to that. But even still, I never use everything from any one source. So I have no problem pulling from different companies or resources. I do like to buy my lesson plans so I don't have to put together lesson plans for multiple different children. I start with the ones I buy and then I tweak them, and that's a lot easier for me. So, what is your budget for homeschooling materials? Well, I budget $1,000 a year. So, I don't know. When I tell people that, some people are like, "That's it, $1,000 for all your kids," and then other people are like, "$1,000? Are you crazy?" So, take it for what it's worth. It works for me. We spend a ton of money on books, but so that's where the majority of that money goes to. Also, memberships, or maybe every now and then classes. I don't like weekly classes very much. I don't like the weekly commitment, but whatever it is, it might be materials if we need a microscope or whatever it is. I try to fit the books and everything else into about $1,000 a year. That's total for the family, not per kid. I think it's pretty good if you compare it to other educational options. But I typically purchase materials online. I use a lot of Amazon, thrift books, eBay. I get a lot of books used. Sometimes I buy them new when I have to, or when I can't find good quality used ones. I don't like the ones that are ripped up and dirty and all. And sometimes I just buy them new because I'm lazy, to be honest, and I just want to click purchase. And let's see, what are your biggest homeschooling challenges? That's a good one. For me, I would say that one of my biggest challenges, it's a personal challenge, but it's related to homeschooling, is that I find that I enjoy the nighttime hours when the house is quiet, the kids have gone to bed, my husband's gone to bed, and I can just kind of be alone to read or gather my thoughts. Sometimes I'm even working. I may be working on homeschool planning or writing on my blog or doing something that's not what I guess people would consider fun, but it's kind of fun to me. That weird. But I just love that time to kind of replenish and refill my cup. But I also need a lot of sleep. So if I don't go to bed by 10, I find that I really pay for that the next day and even later throughout the week. And more importantly, my family pays for that. So my patience is directly correlated to what time I go to bed. So there's always tension there for me, where I vacillate between staying up late and feeling fulfilled that I had that time to kind of work on my own personal projects or just relax alone. But then I hate being tired and I don't like the person that I am when I don't get enough sleep. So I wish I had a solution here for you. I think definitely I've landed on that I must sleep. So I try to get to bed by 10 and then try to find other times like on the weekend or other evenings where my husband can kind of take over more so that I can have a little bit of that alone time, but nothing's ever as good as the middle of the night. Um, what do I wish I had known when I first started homeschooling or when my kids were younger? I feel like I had really good mentors. So I'm not going to say I knew everything that I needed to know because certainly that's not true, but they did really prepare me. And that's part of why we're doing this video series, hoping that we're giving back to the moms that are coming up behind us. But I think that one of the things they told me that I really listened to was to not take school too seriously when the kids are really young because middle school and high school kick in and you really have to button down depending on what your kids' goals are. But for elementary school, yeah, it's okay. So I say I never turn down a field trip if we aren't at home. And if we do 2 field trips in the week, 3, we hike a lot, we are outside in the woods. It's okay. I'm all right with that. I don't necessarily make up the work that we missed. But then also, I'm not afraid to do school on Saturdays either. So sometimes we may have been goofing off, but I don't know. I like it. Making memories, maybe we can call it, during the week a little more. And so if Saturday morning we get up and do an hour or something of school, it's totally fine. But I take school seriously, but I don't take it too seriously. And that I feel that they're still young and they're children and that they have plenty of time to get through all the things I may think that they should get through. But right now, I just want to instill a love of learning. And I think the other thing is staying organized has helped as well. So I can relax a little bit because I know and I feel confident that the children are getting all of the things they need. Our education, it's not haphazard. I know what lessons I've planned for the year and we always get them in. So I think part of it is we're doing 9 months of work and we're spreading it out across a whole year. So it doesn't make our days aren't as intense and we can just have fun. So I think those things that I was told before I started or early on, and I listened because I really admired the moms that told them to me, I think have helped me. And the other piece of advice, I guess it's just related to that, is to prepare and maybe not try to just wing it as much because I get it. A lot of times when I talk to people or I show my schedule or whatever, they're like, "Oh, that's too confining." And I just like to do, we just kind of hang out and make our days and they just flow naturally. And I love that. I was exactly like that. But when the kids start getting older and you start having more of them that are school age, it becomes much more difficult to make that work successfully. So I've found that the older the kids are and the more of them that are school age, the more I have to plan. And then the last thing that I think I had was what about the little ones who are not school age? So I've never homeschooled without little siblings. So um, yeah, I don't know what it's like to only have one kid at home homeschooling. So it's just a normal, natural part of it for me. And in my home, the kids start formal school at in first grade. So there are quite a few years where they're underfoot and hanging out. And they I don't know, it's hard to say. They in my imagination, I make little supplies for them and they have this special box we only pull out at school time and I love all those ideas. And every year I say I'm going to do them, but I never do. They mostly do puzzles, Play-Doh, those are big here, bubbles, playing outside, sitting on my lap, playing with each other. So because the school day is staggered, I may have one sister might be reading to one of the little boys when I'm working with the other sister. I have no problem pulling in a sibling and they like doing it. So it doesn't seem like a hardship for them. But it's hard. I don't know. I don't have an easy answer for this one. I can just say it's hard, but it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I wanted every one of these babies. And I remind myself of that in the midst of the craziness. So they are underfoot. I'm literally tripping over kids much of the day. But I just do the best that I can and to try to keep them, motivated. Good weather days are great because they're outside for a big chunk of the day. And there's nothing perfect. And sometimes they're watching TV. I just want to be honest about that. So I try to make sure it's something good and wonderful and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Octonauts, Wild Kratts. Those are all my kind of learning shows. The Magic School Bus. I'm going to keep it real. Sometimes they're just watching TV. That's what the little ones are doing when I really need to focus intensely with the older kids and they're not able to play outside. So before we go, I'll give you a quick view. You've already been seeing my homeschool room for the most part. This is where we kind of spend most of our day. So the older kids, really all of them, except the little one, they all have their own desk. Right now, these are 4 separate desks. They're from IKEA. They're all pushed together to make one big table. When they're older, they're modular though and can be separated. So when they're older, I'll break them apart as they'll probably want to spend more time doing their own thing. Um, this is kind of where I house our home library. And it looks like just a bunch of books and probably looks very disorganized, but actually it's super organized. And each cube is a different type of book. So there's a cube for Bible and a cube for foreign language, and poetry has a cube, music and art have a cube, history has a couple of cubes. And so for the most part, the cubes that are above the table, above the drawers, are school books and things that I am kind of managing. And then if I can get down low here for you, these things under the schoolroom table here in these cubes, you can see it's a lot messier. This is the kids' world. And over here are all picture books, and over there are more chapter books. And then each child has a basket under here with their books that they may be reading or using for school. And then, we have our maps up. We're doing geography lessons, or I might point to something during a history lesson. And then we have another little side shelf with our active school books. So, books we're using this school year. And then it just kind of comes around to my messy desk. I thought about cleaning it up for you, but just trying to keep it real. It's always a complete wreck. And yeah, when we're not in here, usually the kids will spread out if they're doing silent reading or something on the couch or the dining room, in the kitchen. We might be doing stuff during lunch, eating, just wherever. They are usually on the same, we're all usually on the same floor though, the main floor, kind of separate but together. So that's everything I have for you today. If you guys have any other questions, please leave them in the comments or feel free to email me. I'll follow up with the links. And I hope that you're able to take something away from this. I've really enjoyed our time together. So I will see you soon.